topic for today is the first 90 days. This is the very smiley Michael Watkins. I think he looks quite like, I shouldn't say this because it's recorded. I won't. In the book, he looks quite like Roman Abramovich in the book. Doesn't look like it here. He obviously has a very changeable face. Looks very shiny and smiley here. He was very, very lovely. We had a good chat. What I wanted to know was who is in. I'm going to make this anonymous. We're going to use the stars. So let me hide names so it's anonymous. Who is in their first 90 days? So Nina, I imagine you're going to put a star here. And who is not in their first 90 days? The way that stars work is if you go towards the top of your screen, if you click on view options, and then why is names coming up? Hide names of annotators. Zoom keeps popping up. Oh, won't let me do it, everyone. Hopefully that's not too confidential information if you're in your first 90 days. There we go. So yeah, the way it works is go towards the top of your screen, view options, and then annotate, and then stamp, and then star. So everyone that's here for the first time, Sarah in the team, the lovely Sarah, who's wearing a delightfully dotted jumper, she has put the instructions in chat for you. But let's get a bit of a chat. Oh, quite a few of us in our first 90 days. That's exciting. And who did manage to listen to the podcast? I guess the main question I want really is, if you did listen to it, is there anything particular that stuck out for you in the conversation? If there is, head into, I think it does count first 90 days freelancing. Yes, I think the first 90 days of anything, the first 90 days of a new job in the same company, the first 90 days of doing something dramatically different. Ula says, the stars don't work at all. Ula's given us technical support. Thank you, Ula. So don't if you're on a mobile, don't look for the options. But don't worry, it just gives us a bit of a sense of where people are at. Thanks, Ula. So if you did listen to the podcast this week, let me know what stuck for you. Was there a particular found it difficult to understand him? That's interesting, Reg. Tell me more. That's very interesting. Either off mute or in chat. That's very interesting. See if just discover that too. Okay. Anyone who listened and anything that particularly stuck in the conversation. I've not listened back yet, so my role is changing, so not quite new, but new challenge. Yeah, that's a new challenge. Thanks, Dorita. I'm just going to pause in case, or I'm going to assume that nothing stuck, which is a very interesting insight. Oh, it sounded like it was underwater. Oh, Rach, that's really interesting. I've not listened to the sound quality. Like the adaptation to a more virtual world, learning versus action. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, Rachel, in one of the transition traps. Nina, pausing to learn rather than do. Yeah, that learn action thing. Role of the manager in ensuring connections. 4 big traps, loved it. Transition traps. Sorry if the sound quality wasn't very good, everybody. I need to listen and just assess that. Transition traps. Okay, well, let's talk about transition traps then. Let me just, the funny thing is that you were very clear. You wonder why. Let me just remove your lovely stars and let's talk about a couple of different things. Like I said, I wanted to focus on these transition traps. So when you start, what are the things I think you should stop doing? And then I wanted to see, this is very random, I'm very nosy, but I wanted to see if anybody's got any memorable moments in their first 90 days, like any funny stories about anything that's happened in their first 90 days of a new job. We'll just do that for a bit of fun. And then I have some actions that I think are relevant regardless of like 90 days, 900 days. So let's just talk about starting and stopping for a second. There were 5 transition traps that really stuck out for me in his book. And I thought I'd go through them and then we'd do the stars on the screen with which ones you maybe identify with. So the first thing that you need to stop when you start a job is the habit of sort of sticking with what you know, doing it because it's something that you've done before, which feels like really easy and it's sort of familiar ground. But often when we start a new role, it's an opportunity to do something different, approach it in a different way, almost like restart yourself a little bit. I found it really useful actually when I was transitioning from Virgin to Microsoft. That was a very different cultural context for me. Like Virgin, I mean, they're both quite entrepreneurial companies, but the Virgin felt very different to Microsoft. Like Microsoft, a very big corporate, like all the things that go with being in a very big corporate. Virgin at the center was very ad hoc and entrepreneurial. And I spent some time with somebody called Ian Sanders on, we did like a walk and talk coaching session. And I was trying to work, I was very conscious about what did I want to carry over and what was I willing to let go of so that I could sort of not rebuild my brand, but benefit from being in a different place and not kind of just like take exactly who I was in Virgin and place that person into Microsoft. So I think there's some things that you do want to keep because it's consistent to you, but that you want to give yourself the opportunity to grow as well. Karen, hold the office dog. We're coming to it. Oh, can't wait. Hold the office dog. I knew there'd be some funny stories. Okay, the next thing. This looks like it. This looks like it resonated with people. When you start a new job, you've got to stop. Action, action, action. Like the desire to do. I think this comes from potentially a bit of a place of insecurity or a confidence gremlin. The feel like that your worth is in action. And the reality is that you have hopefully you're gonna have quite a while to put that stuff into action. But that, I think, those first 90 days are such a learning luxury. You have permission to ask the questions like, what does that mean? How does that work? What's the objective here? Who should we involve? Like, you have so much permission to learn in that period. It's a real luxury. And so if you rush into action too soon, you're sort of losing that luxury. And the listening, the learning is going to help you far more than doing lots of things that you might have done before because you want to show an impact very quickly. I think there are other ways that you can show impact. I really realize, I'm going to talk about this when we get onto top tips at the end, there's the power of asking questions over taking action. And that took me a while to realize, but if you can just shift your focus into asking questions rather than taking action, it really supports this point around listening and learning. Third one is setting unrealistic expectations. In the first 90 days, I'm going to transform this team. I'm going to deliver a project bigger than I've ever delivered before. I'm going to make a dramatic difference to this organization. I mean, it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, everybody, when you're trying to learn some stuff. So not always great to set those unrealistic expectations, because you don't want to come away from 90 days and feel like you've not achieved what you've set out to do. But if you set those unrealistic expectations, that's more likely to be the sort of feeling that you're getting. Fourth one is too much yes. Yes, I can do it. Yes, 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 yes. It means that you're not starting with that boundary and structure in mind that's going to support you as you keep going on in that organization. So just be very, obviously you're trying to be helpful and show you're keen and committed and all that great stuff, but just be careful of saying too many yeses. I would almost like track your yeses. Like, what did I say yes to this week? And was that too many yeses this week? What might I need to do differently next week? Maybe have a bit of a yes tracker. And then this one I thought was really interesting. A lot of people, I don't know if I do this or not. A lot of people, when they start in an organization, they prioritize vertical relationships, i.e. your manager and the people that maybe like are in your team. And if you are a manager, the people that work for you. And in your first 90 days, all of your effort and energy goes up and down, up and down. And so what people miss out on is the sideways support that they need. So the building relationships in different part of the business, finding those kind of points of connection in like the cross functions, and that is really helpful for enabling you. And so it's just to be aware that you might want to balance where your energy and effort is going and not just solely focus on the other vertical relationships. So this is the stuff when we start we need to stop. What I would love to know is, which ones of these do you identify with? So stars on screen, stick a star on any of the circles that you're like, yeah, I think I'll probably do that. Yeah, that might be a bit of an issue for me. While you're doing that, I'm going to catch up with some stuff that's in chat. Chi says, is it still relevant when you move roles in the same company? I think all this stuff is relevant. Any new role, I think this is it's just a good way for you to just zoom out. This book, I feel, is just a good way to zoom out when our jobs are very busy and there's a lot of doing, and just think a little bit more strategically about how we're approaching our work, how we're building our relationships, how we're kind of creating our brand. And so I actually think you don't need to be in a new job to do it. That's what there's so much in here that just helps you to zoom out. I honestly have read this book a lot. Would really recommend it. Great insight when you're onboarding. Yeah. Francesca says, what about if your employer sets unrealistic expectations, but you're new, it's hard for you to know if they're realistic? Well, I would use the I can if stuff there. So we talked about this a little bit before. So let's say someone is saying, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Rather than going, yes, 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 I would say, okay, well, I can do it if we relook at when that project needs to be delivered. I can do it if I claw back a bit of time next week so I come out of those meetings. And if you do, rather than going, I can, which becomes too much yes, the I can if creates the consideration. And so it doesn't come across as you being difficult, but it does come across as confident to be able to do that. Forces people to make choices. Can you remind me to do the stars? Sure, Fran. Top of your screen, view options, and then click on that, and then you'll see annotate. in a little toolbar, and then you go to stamp, and then you go to star. Sarah's put them in there as well. Okay, so interesting stuff. Lots of action versus listening, lots of too much yeses. So I thought let's just do, just for random reasons, mainly Helen. Let's just think about Karen, you get to go first. What memorable moments, and that can be something that happened that you were really proud of, something that was an unexpected, or something that was very embarrassing. What memorable moments have you got of your first 90 days in a company? Let's just share. So Karen, you've got to come off mute and tell us about the dog that weed on you. What happened?
That was actually yesterday.
Karen did a right job. Tell us more.
Yeah. So I started 10 days ago, and I'm not very much of a dog person, but there are a few of his dogs. So I thought I'm going to be friendly and don't be labeled as the girl that doesn't like dogs. So the dog ran to me and then wanted some cuddles. So I started scratching and he just peed on my feet.
That is the best story ever. I'm really sorry. You definitely won't be known as the person who doesn't like dogs. You might be known as the person who got weed on by a dog, which is probably not much better. But oh, Karen, I hope it's all going well for you. That's a memorable moment. It's a memorable PodPlus moment now. Thank you, Karen. Kat says, years ago, my first day induction went, hi Kat, here's your desk, here's your computer, you've got a range review to do for Tesco this evening, so shout if you need it. I mean, how to put someone under pressure, Kat? Did it go well? I would probably say I thought it'd be useful if we started from a blank piece of paper with the current range and I'd be like, because I don't know what's on it. Nina, my new role is in the same company. Data yesterday, I walked back to my old desk. At what point did you realize, Nina, were you like, and then did you like, I'm just gonna turn around? Sometimes I do that, like in London.
Yeah, it was that very awkward, oh my gosh, what have I done? I don't want anyone to see me.
Did you like pick something off the floor and then like be like, oh, or did you like, oh, I've forgotten something, or did you just subtly just spin?
I just subtly kind of like quickly walked past as if no one saw me, and then I bumped into somebody. I was like, I can't believe I've just like on proper autopilot gone the wrong way.
I love it. Oh, well, I hope new role's going well. Claire said, I had old staff bet on which new staff they could get to leave. That's a funny bet, Claire. On which new staff they could get to leave first. Poor new staff. We stayed longer than they did, I bet. What have we got here? In my first job, I thought I would get copies for everyone. Oh, in the process of putting them down on the desk, I spilt them all over my new manager. Oh no. Oh dear. I can imagine you felt really bad. Again, yeah, way to make an impression. Michael doesn't mention that in the book. He doesn't mention don't spill coffee on your manager. There are some tips about managers that I'm going to talk about. Oh, these are too good, everyone. On my first job abroad at 20, Joe says, I got lost the night before. So when I walked into the office the next day, hundreds of people knew who I was because my mum had been in touch with them. Oh, Joe. But also, like, really caring of your mum to, to contact so many people about you. It's a lovely mum. Laura, based on recent experience, teams often wait too long to hire and desperate for the person to start. That's true. Leon, I introduced myself to someone in the office. They said, yes, I know, we've met. I'm the managing director. Oh, Leon. That's a moment you're like, yes, I remember you. I just wasn't sure if you remembered me. Like, how do you get out of that situation? This is a book in itself. Like, okay, maybe it's definitely a post on social media, isn't it? Okay, let's move on from memorable moments, though I am enjoying it immensely. Let's talk about some practical stuff to do with you and your career. Okay, so stuff in the book that I think is relevant regardless. There's this bit, actually, I was reminded of it because I'd obviously really liked this 10 years ago when I underlined it. Problem preferences. So the premise here is that sometimes at work, regardless of how long you've been doing your job, you can overplay your preference for solving certain types of problems. And it means that you might miss out on opportunities to add value in other areas. So in the book, what Michael does is these aren't quite exactly what he writes down. This is sort of my summary of the stuff that he has, a table. And these are types of problems that you might be attracted to solving. So for example, stuff around inclusion or maybe product problems, budget, customer systems, process, etc. You can always sort of screenshot this and evaluate it for yourself. But the point is, so if I was doing this, which problems do I think that I sort of prioritize? People, because that's always where I would go first. And Weirdly, my team will tell me, weirdly, I think I sort of go here. I go here quite a lot because I like the detail. I like it to be fixed. I like it to work. And so it's either people or systems and processes. I'm like, that needs to be more efficient. That needs to be better, which means that even though I could add value in other areas, it's not always or very often where I would put my effort first. And I think it is useful to think about what are your problem preferences, and therefore what opportunities for value add might you be missing out on. And the other lens, right, when you evaluate this and you like highlight what are my problem preferences, the other lens that he puts on it, and in the book, is you can also then, once you've done that, think about, are those problems more technical, political, or cultural? And so again, it's just a different way of you thinking, where do I naturally focus, and therefore where might I be missing out on contributing more? So I might think, oh, do you know what, I could think more about our suppliers. Like, I don't often think about how we source suppliers and make sure that they're a good fit for Amazing If. Or I might think more about, or I should spend more time on our client experience, because that's not automatically where my head goes, for example. And so it just helps you to think about what strengths you almost might be overplaying and some things that you might be missing out on contributing to. Another one that I thought was useful was about how you manage your manager. And there are 5 ideas for action. Again, I think are relevant regardless. So I thought I'd share these, and then we'll do a bit of top tips. I thought the other thing that we could do is sort of crowdsource amongst us. What do we think are top tips for your first 90 days? And maybe there's some of our top tips which could kind of go beyond that 90-day period. So the 5 things in terms of managing your manager that I think are relevant regardless. The first is don't stay away. So in the book, he says that sometimes, and I've had this before, where a manager doesn't seem very available. And so you sort of just wait for them to almost come to you, because you're like, oh, they'll come to me when they need it. But he says, actually, you want to sort of, that can create communication gaps and sometimes challenges. Like, I had a manager when I was at Virgin, my manager, James, he lived in Geneva. And so I could work very independently, but that could have created some communication gaps between us. And so actually you have to make the effort to meet relatively often. If you leave it too long, those gaps can get in the way of your growth. Your manager will be a big enabler of your growth. So don't stay away. Second was don't surprise your manager. So maybe like in a meeting, for example, I would send an email. If there was something I wanted to talk about that they weren't accepting, I would probably say, like, heads up, when we talk on Friday, one of the topics I want to discuss is, and then it means that you're not getting like an emotional surprise response in the moment that you want to have that conversation. So as far as possible, kind of avoid the surprises. I also think that's easier when you've got regular communication between the two of you. Third one is make sure that you present ideas and issues. So what he talks about is that sometimes what people do is they just bring issues to a manager. Like, this isn't going wrong, this is what I need your help on, this is really difficult right now. But also think about, are you taking ideas for them to build on? Sort of approaches about the way that you want to do things differently, because that kind of makes a more kind of positive and additive conversation. Fourth, lose the long list. So by the way, everyone, this is my framing. He says this a bit more professionally in the book. It's quite a corporate book. The lose the long list, i.e. when you have, like, imagine you've got a one-to-one, and I've so done this, and you have like 21 things you want to talk about. And he says a lot of that stuff you can fire off over email, or we use Microsoft Teams. You can be like, okay, there are 10 things I want to talk about today, but actually 5 of them we can probably fix on Teams or Slack or whatever it is you use. The things that I really want to discuss with you are items 1, 2, and 3, because if it's quick to fix, you can probably do it over email or Teams or insert equivalent. But actually the value is often in the discussion that you have about a thing, and that's what you should leave more for those meetings. And then the last one is about accept their style. He frames this as don't try and change them, which made me think about relationships. That would be relationship advice, right? They'd be like, oh, you're in a new relationship, don't try and change them. And it's the same. You are sort of in a relationship with your manager, and if they are the way they are and you are not going to change them, so accept that. Try and work with them and their style. And if their style means that you are not getting what you need, perhaps look at your Squiggly career support system to fill some of those gaps, because you're probably not going to change that person, which I thought was interesting. Which one of those resonate with you? Let me know. I thought the ideas versus issues one, I was like, oh, that's a good thought. Like, what's the thing of those ones? I was like, I think about what I'm taking to conversations. I always now, Sarah will love this. Don't tell her I said this. I often think of Sarah as my manager. Don't tell her that. She will love it. Like, she'll be like, yes, Helen. But as in we sort of manage each other. And so it makes me think, oh, when Sarah and I are having conversations, what's the balance between ideas versus issues in our conversations? And am I always getting that right? Do any of those resonate with you? Thinking 6 stars. Oh, you're doing stars. Don't surprise them. Yeah, interesting. Don't stay away. It really is chichi important to connect with your manager. It is. And I think that connection can also be personal. Like, it doesn't always have to be like, let's connect on the things that we need to do. It can be, let's connect on how are you? Let's just have a conversation about how are you. Like, it doesn't, I think sometimes that quite helps. Like, what's going on in your world? What's some of the stuff that's happening right now? All resonate. Good. Accept their style, improve their relationship. Yeah, it's sort of easier said than done, isn't it? Particularly if they're difficult. You're like, I don't want to accept their style because they're really difficult to deal with, but you kind of have to, because you're not going to change them. And I feel like that then means that you can put that energy that you might have been putting into trying to change them into something else. And I hope none of you have got that situation with a very difficult manager, because it is really hard to deal with when you've got it. Alison, don't surprise them. Definitely, I've learned the experience. And what happens is that probably emotionally react. Yeah, absolutely. And that emotion isn't always productive for the conversation. So for the last few minutes, I thought we'd do a few top tips. So stuff that you think has worked well for you in your first 90 days. Anything that you have done that you're like, that really set me up for success. I tell you one of mine has been about the 3 questions. So whenever, this is more from the perspective of being a manager, though you could adapt it if you are not a manager. So whenever in corporate life, I was starting a new job, particularly in a new company, but not always. And I was like, I don't know what to talk about in these meetings. I would always ask 3 questions. My first question was, what is one thing I need to know about you to help you be at your best? My second question is, what was one document I could read to understand your role? And my third question is, who is one person I need to build a relationship with that could help you to do your job? So I always ask like basically people, some kind of document and some kind of personal thing that would help me help somebody else. And I always had a really good conversation, and I came away with like just almost like my own little mini project plan for each person based on that conversation. So that was useful. Set up one-to-ones with everyone that's important using great questions. So kind of, yeah, like be proactive about setting up those one-to-ones. Maybe don't wait for them. Use the new person card. Yeah, use I'm new and I've got a question. Yeah, the new question, like grab that for as long as you can. Don't stay away. Get to meet everyone, but IT and facilities. Good point, Caroline. Make friends with IT. They will help you. Yeah, I always think, yeah, facilities. I'm always make friends with receptionists in buildings because they know everyone and they can make anything happen. So I was always like, hi, I'm Helen. Would you like a cup of tea? Always have chats. Informal conversations, joining coffees. Yeah, like the informal conversations and coffees. I mean, I would also say keep those up. They're not just something we have to do when we're new. Asking questions. I work in marketing and products, Leon says. I find out from other teams what their pain points are. Yeah. I always thought my framing is always, if you can talk to people about their problems and their priorities, you can often kind of think, oh, how could I help with that? Always kind of a useful filter. Reflect and find the small wins. Yeah, Nina, he does talk a lot about small wins. So make sure that, particularly because it can feel a bit overwhelming, make sure you're writing down. I'd be like, what are my wins this week? That could be quite a good way. Please repeat the 3 questions. Of course, Becky. Question number 1, what is one thing I need to know about you to help you to be at your best? Question number 2, what document I can read to understand what you do? Question number 3, who is one person I could build a relationship with to help you in your role? They were my 3 questions. Heather, investing time in building relationships. Yeah, that we've just submitted our next Harvard Business Review article, which is very exciting. And one of the ideas for action in there is about sideways support. Like, make sure that you build your sideways support in your Squiggly career, and it's that sort of thing that gets you to it. That's nice, Alison. Ask your new team what their worries are. Yeah, what's keeping you up is always a nice question to ask. I won't say the 3 questions again. I think I've said them, but if I haven't, you could watch this back. It's recorded, or maybe we'll put it on a social media post if it's useful. Make friends with the admin people. So true, so true. What's one thing I need to know about you? Okay, thank you, Lucy. What knowledge skills is this? Brilliant. These are be kind to yourself. I think that might be a very nice way to end. Let's end with Caroline's kind of point here. I'm going to frame it as a quote, Caroline. Be kind with yourself. The first 90 days are bloody knackering, so have lots of downtime in the evenings and weekends. I think that is an honest and good place to end today. Hopefully you found this helpful. Maybe save the chat, which is like the 3 little dots at the bottom of the meeting chat, if you want to keep some of everyone's brilliant ideas for action. I think there's some great things there. I am clicking save. We will be back next week. Next week, we are talking about portfolio careers. Sarah and I haven't recorded this yet. I think we're recording on Sunday night. We're squeezing it in. But we're talking about what is a portfolio career, how can you make one happen, and some different ideas to help you if it's something you want to do. But until then, everybody, have a good rest of your week. Good luck to everybody who is in their first 90 days. Hopefully you've got some useful things today, and we will speak to you again soon, everyone. Bye for now. Bye, everybody. Bye.